Each party controls both houses of Congress, 40 governorships nationwide, and the balance of power in almost all state legislatures. All 435 seats in the House of Representatives seats are on the ballot, with 35 Senate seats in play. Republicans and Democrats alike have brought out their heavy hitters to make their closing arguments in a race seen as reshaping the direction of the country that could either embolden the presidency of Donald Trump or provide a firm check on his agenda. For more now on this, we're joined by our reporter SHERWIN BRYCE. PEASE. SHERWIN, good afternoon here from us, and good morning, I suppose, there in you. I suppose these midterm elections have always been seen as a referendum on the president, and this time around one could say that there's no shortage of opinions on the current occupant of the White House.
Well, I think the enthusiasm we are seeing here on both sides, Palesa, both Democratic Party enthusiasm and Republican enthusiasm, really speaks to the contentious nature of the political debate in this country and how it has swirled around the presidency of Donald Trump. It's fair, and he has admitted this, that this is a referendum on his presidency. In fact, he's been stumping for a number of Senate candidates in Georgia and Tennessee. And part of his message is to say, well, I'm not on the ballot, but pretend that I am on the ballot. And that's how he's really enthusing his base. Some of the particular arguments focused on immigration concerns, which has been a stalwart kind of issue for Donald Trump in this presidency. But you've also, on the other side, seen the enthusiasm of Democrats. I mean, this is, they keep talking about a blue wave, Palesa, although pollsters are now sort of checking that rhetoric, given what they talked about in 2016 and the result that completely undermined their predictions in terms of Donald Trump's victory. But we are seeing a lot of enthusiasm. In fact, we're seeing the big hitters, the likes of former President Barack Obama, which is something quite unprecedented to see. Remember, he was Donald Trump's predecessor, and convention teaches us that the former president really stays in the shadows and allows his successor really to set their agenda. But President Obama, very early on into the presidency of Donald Trump, came out with a statement around the time that they were trying to impose this Muslim ban. And he made it very clear in that statement that he will speak out when he believed that the core values of the United States were being undermined. And I think that's part of why you are seeing such a big showing from the former president on the campaign trail this cycle.
Yeah, and it's very unusual, SHERWIN, isn't it, for the former president to actually speak out publicly against his successor. That's exactly what former President Barack Obama has been doing, as much as he did not drop any names, but one could get the feel that he was referring to President Donald Trump.
Correct, Palesa. He didn't mention him by name, but he's certainly talking about him, right? He's been talking about the lies and the disregard for American values. He talks a lot about how this election is about the character of America. You know, today or tomorrow will be the 10-year anniversary of when President Barack Obama was elected on a balmy night in Chicago 10 years ago. And I feel, you know, that message of hope and change and we can do this seems to have been countered by the narrative of America First. So there are indeed two very clear and different visions that these two parties represent for for the future of America, and they talk about how this election is going to define the future policies of this country for a generation. And so that's why you see the levels of enthusiasm. But I think also the levels of enthusiasm is being framed by the fact that Donald Trump supporters feel he has maintained his promises, he has lived up to expectations, he's doing what they wanted him to do. And of course you have Democrats who feel that he is undermining the values that perhaps someone like President Obama likes to speak about.
And we've also seen a number of polls coming out on Sunday showing Democrats with the edge. What can you tell us about this, SHERWIN?
Not as much as the edge as the similar poll, an NBC Marist poll, Palesa, came out on Sunday, and it gives Democrats a 7-point advantage nationally heading into these elections. This is actually down from a 9% advantage that the Democrats held in October. I'll just break it down for you a little bit, Palesa. Democrats lead with likely African-American voters 84% to 8%. Among Latinos, 57% to 29%. Voters aged 18 to 34, Democrats have an advantage 57% to 34%. with women, and this is a very important constituency in this election, 55% of women favor the Democrats, over 37% to Republicans, while independents favor Democrats in this election, 35% to 23%. Now, on the Republican side, Republicans have an edge with voters between the ages of 50 and 64 by an advantage of 52% to 43%. Among men in America, 50% to 43% prefer Republicans. And among white voters are still a majority in the United States. 50% prefer Republicans to 44%. What we are, though, seeing, Palesa, and this is the big story here, is we're seeing record numbers turning out in the early voting districts around this country. A number of states, I think about 36 out of the 50 states have early voting, and what we are seeing is a record turnout in a number of states. So there's a great deal of enthusiasm here. We're expecting a record turnout for the midterm, for final voting, which is tomorrow. So the numbers here are going to tell a different story at the end of the day.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the turnout, show, and I'm glad that you mentioned it, because traditionally it's usually lower than that of presidential elections, and many people are of the view that the results now could have dramatic implications, for the United States, but most importantly for Donald Trump legislative agenda.
Well, what's at stake here for Donald Trump in particular is that at the moment he enjoys control. His party controls the White House, the Senate, and the House of Representatives. That has allowed him to confirm a number of Supreme Court justices. It's allowed him to pass a very controversial tax cut, plus a $1 trillion tax cut for the United States, which many argue has favored businesses over the middle class. So he's been able to implement this America First agenda without a real check from the opposition. And what you saw early into former President Barack Obama's term in office was that they did control all the levers of power. They did control all the houses and the White House, and then they lost the midterm elections. The Democratic Party lost 63 seats in 2010, and that provided for the rest of his term a big check from the Republican Party. You'll remember that one of the final acts of President Obama was trying to confirm a Supreme Court justice, and the Republicans because they controlled the Senate, would not even give him a hearing. So that's what's at stake here for Donald Trump. If the Democrats do, as the pollsters are saying, win the House of Representatives and Republicans manage to hold the Senate, winning one house provides them with some leverage in terms of checking this administration. So I think this is why you're seeing Donald Trump on the campaign trail to the extent that you've seen him, because he's very desperate to hold onto those three levers of government. And this is why it's so important, I think, for Democrats to do well on Tuesday, because it'll make them feel better about 2016, but it will also provide them a check on this administration.
It's going to be very interesting to see how things pan out, SHERWIN, tomorrow. Thank you so much indeed there to our U.S. correspondent, SHERWIN Bryce Peace, reporting, of course, on the midterm elections that are due to take place in the United States.